The tunnel was dark except for the blue glow of Kellera's scanner. She moved carefully on her forelegs, testing each step before putting her full weight down. The mineshaft went deep into the ground, and every sound echoed off the rock walls. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. The air smelled like dust and metal. Kellara had worked as a surveyor on Viridian Prime for 3 years. She was good at her job. Her people, the Veshans, were naturally graceful and had perfect balance. Their forelegs made them ideal for working in dangerous places where others might slip and fall. Back home on her planet, Kellara's family was proud of her work. She sent money back every month to help her younger brothers go to school. She pressed her scanner against the tunnel wall and watched the readings appear on the screen. The rock looked stable here. She made a note on her datapad and moved forward another 10 meters. The mining company needed to know which areas were safe to dig and which ones might collapse. It was important work, and Kellara took it seriously. The morning had started like any other. She ate breakfast in the colony cafeteria with other workers. Humans, Veshans, and half a dozen other species all worked together on Viridian Prime. The colony was small but busy. Everyone had a job to do. Kellara liked the humans she worked with. They were friendly and always curious about her culture. They asked questions about her home planet and tried to learn words in her language. Now deep underground, Kellara was alone. She preferred it that way when she worked. It helped her concentrate. The tunnel stretched ahead of her, disappearing into darkness. Her scanner showed that she had another 100 meters to check before she could head back to the surface. She moved forward, her hooves clicking softly on the stone floor. The tunnel narrowed here, and she had to lower her head to fit. The walls pressed close on both sides. She did not like tight spaces, but the job required her to go where others could not. That was when she heard it. A sound like distant thunder. But there were no storms underground. Kellara froze. She knew that sound. Every miner knew that sound. The rock was shifting. She turned and started running back toward the entrance. Her forelegs carried her fast, but the tunnel was long, too long. The rumbling grew louder. Dust began falling from the ceiling. Small rocks bounced off her back. She ran harder, her heart pounding in her chest. The entrance was still 50 meters away. 40 meters, 30. The ceiling came down. Kellara felt the impact before she understood what was happening. Something massive struck her right side and drove her to the ground. She tried to scream, but dust filled her mouth and lungs. The world became nothing but noise and crushing weight and pain. Terrible pain in her leg. Then everything went dark and quiet. When Kellara woke, she could not move. She lay on her side, pressed against the cold stone floor. Heavy rocks pinned her body in place. She tried to pull free, but nothing worked. Her right rear leg hurt worse than anything she had ever felt. The pain was so intense that it made her dizzy. She called for help, but her voice was weak. The dust had damaged her throat. She coughed and tried again, louder this time. No one answered. The tunnel was silent except for the sound of settling rocks. Time stopped meaning anything. Kellara drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes she was back home with her family, playing in the gardens as a child. Sometimes she was aware of the rocks and the pain and the fear. She wondered if anyone knew she was missing. She wondered if they would find her in time. Hours passed, maybe a whole day. Kellara could not tell. Then she heard voices, distant at first, then closer. Drilling sounds, cutting tools. Someone shouted her name. She tried to answer, but only managed a weak sound. The rescue team worked for another hour to reach her. They removed rocks one at a time, careful not to cause another collapse. When they finally cleared enough space to see her, Kellara heard someone curse in human language. "Get the medical team down here now," a voice said. "She's alive, but it's bad." They gave her something for the pain. The sharp edges of agony became dull and distant. Hands touched her gently, checking her body for injuries. Someone put a breathing mask over her face. The air tasted clean and cool. "We need to move fast," another voice said. "That leg is crushed. If we don't get her to the medical wing soon, we'll lose her." They lifted her onto a stretcher. The movement sent fresh waves of pain through her body despite the medicine. Kellara looked down at her right rear leg and immediately wished she had not. It was bent at an angle that was completely wrong. Dark blood soaked through her fur. She could not feel anything below her knee. The trip to the surface took forever. The rescue team carried her carefully through the tunnels and then into the bright sunlight of the colony. Kellara closed her eyes against the glare. People crowded around, staring. She heard their worried voices, but could not focus on the words. The medical wing was clean and white. Dr. Myra Chen, the colony's human doctor, was waiting. She had a kind face, but her eyes were serious as she examined Kellara's leg. Other doctors and nurses moved around the room, preparing equipment and talking in low voices. Give her another dose, Dr. Chen said. This is going to hurt. They worked on her for hours. Clara floated in a haze of pain medicine, aware of what was happening but somehow separate from it. She heard the doctors talking about bone damage and nerve damage and blood loss. She heard words like severe and irreparable and amputation. When she fully woke up 3 days later, her leg was gone. Dr. Chen sat beside her bed and explained everything in a gentle voice. The damage had been too extensive to save the leg. They had been forced to amputate just below her hip. They had done everything they could. Clara stared at the ceiling and said nothing. She felt the empty space where her leg should have been. Her brain kept trying to move it, kept expecting to feel it there, but there was only emptiness. I'm sorry, Dr. Chen said. I know this is difficult, but you're alive, Clara. You survived. Clara turned her face to the wall. Alive, she thought. But for what? A Veshan with 3 legs was not really a Veshan at all. She was broken, useless, her life was over. She just did not know it yet. Jake Morrison wiped grease from his hands and looked at the mining drill he had just repaired. The machine hummed smoothly now, all its parts working in perfect harmony. He smiled. There was something satisfying about fixing things that everyone else had given up on. He worked in the maintenance section of Viridian Prime, keeping the colony's equipment running. Most people thought his job was boring, but Jake loved it. Every broken machine was a puzzle waiting to be solved. Every problem had an answer if you looked hard enough. It was late afternoon when he walked into the colony cafeteria for dinner. The large room was half full of workers from the day shift. Jake grabbed a tray and moved through the food line, picking up whatever looked decent. The colony food was not great, but it was better than going hungry. He found an empty table near the window and sat down. Outside, the red sun of Viridian Prime was setting behind the distant mountains. The sky turned shades of orange and purple. Jake ate his food and watched the sunset, his mind already thinking about tomorrow's work orders. Mind if I sit here? Jake looked up to see Dr. Myra Chen standing with her own tray. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Mira was one of the few people in the colony who actually enjoyed talking about technical things. She understood how systems worked, even biological ones. Rough day? Jake asked. Myra sat down and sighed. You could say that. We have a patient who won't eat, won't talk, and barely moves. I'm running out of ideas. What's wrong with them? Her name is She's lost her leg in that mining accident 3 weeks ago. Myra pushed food around on her plate. We had to amputate. There was no choice. But now she's given up completely. Jake had heard about the accident. The whole colony had talked about it for days. He had not known the details though. Can't you give her a prosthetic leg? Myra shook her head. It's not that simple. Veshan biology is incredibly complex. Their nervous system is completely different from ours. Their balance depends on having 4 legs working together. No one has ever successfully made a prosthetic for a Desi. Their own medical technology can't do it. But someone must have tried. Oh, they've tried. For centuries, it just doesn't work. The neural interfaces don't connect properly. The balance is impossible to replicate. A Veshan with 3 legs can't walk. They can barely stand. Myra looked sad. In their culture, losing a leg means your life is basically over. Kelleher knows this. That's why she's given up. Jake was quiet for a moment. He thought about machines and systems and problems that people said were impossible to solve. He thought about all the equipment he had fixed that others had thrown away. Can I meet her? Myra looked surprised. Why, just curious. Maybe I can help. Jake, I appreciate the thought, but this isn't a machine you can repair. This is a living being with a complex biological system that nobody understands well enough to replicate. I know, but let me try anyway. What's the harm? Myra studied him for a long moment, then shrugged. Alright, but don't expect much. She won't even look at most visitors. The next morning, Jake walked into the medical wing carrying his datapad and a portable holographic projector. The nurse at the desk pointed him to Callara's room. He knocked softly and entered. The room was dim. Callara lay on a bed designed for her 4-legged body, staring at the wall. She was smaller than Jake had expected, maybe the size of a large dog, with blue-gray fur and dark eyes. Where her right rear leg should have been, there was only bandages and empty space. Hello, Jake said. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm an engineer here at the colony. Kelleher did not move or respond. Jake pulled up a chair and sat down. He did not try to make her feel better or tell her things would be okay. Instead, he opened his datapad and pulled up some diagrams. I've been reading about Veshan physiology. It's fascinating. Your nervous system operates on a different frequency than human nerves, and your balance system is incredible. 4 independent legs, each with its own control, but all working together as one unit. Still no response. Here's what I don't understand though. Jake projected a hologram into the air between them. It showed a simplified model of a Thessian body. Your people say prosthetics are impossible, but I've seen the attempts, and they're all based on copying your natural leg exactly. That might be the wrong approach. For the first time, Kalara's eyes moved slightly. She was listening. Jake continued, warming to the subject. What if instead of trying to copy your biological leg, we design something that works with your brain's existing commands, but uses different technology? Your neural system sends signals. Those signals have patterns. If we can read those patterns and translate them into mechanical movement, maybe we can create something that feels natural to you. Kalara finally turned her head to look at him. Her voice was rough from lack of use. Others have tried. It doesn't work. Others aren't human engineers who fix impossible problems every day. Jake grinned. I've been reading research papers all night. Human prosthetics have come a long way. We figured out how to connect artificial limbs to our nervous system. The signals are different for you, but the basic principle is the same. Input, processing, output, processing, output. You don't understand Thessian biology. You're right, I don't. That's why I need your help. Jake leaned forward. Work with me. Teach me how your body works. Let me try to build something. If it doesn't work, you're no worse off than you are now. But if it does work, it won't work, Kalara said. But there was less certainty in her voice. Maybe, probably not on the first try, or the second, or the 10th. But I'm stubborn, and I have access to some of the best engineering equipment in human space. Jake stood up. Think about it. I'll come back tomorrow. He did come back the next day, and the day after that. Each time, he brought new questions. He asked about how her legs distributed weight. He wanted to know how fast her nerves transmitted signals. He asked about joint angles and muscle tension and 100 other details. At first, Kalara answered because it was easier than ignoring him. But slowly, despite herself, she became interested. Jake's questions made her think about her body in ways she never had before. He did not treat her like she was broken or pitiful. He treated her like she was a complex system that he needed to understand. After a week of visits, Jake brought a small device. This is a neural sensor. If you let me place it on your residual limb, it will read the electrical signals your nerves are still sending. Even though your leg is gone, your brain is still trying to move it. Those signals are still there. Kalara hesitated, then agreed. Jake carefully attached the sensor. He watched the readings on his datapad, his eyes bright with excitement. This is perfect. Look at this pattern. Every time you think about moving your leg, there's a clear signal spike. We can work with this. He looked up at her. Kalara, I think I can actually do this. I think I can build you a leg. Something shifted inside Kalara. It was small, barely noticeable, but for the first time since the accident, she felt something other than despair. It was not hope, not yet, but it was interest, curiosity, the faint possibility that maybe, just maybe, her life was not over after all. If I agree to this, she said slowly, what would it involve? Jake's smile widened. A lot of work. Physical therapy to keep your remaining muscles strong. Daily sessions where we map your neural patterns. Testing prototypes. It won't be easy, and it will probably hurt sometimes. But I promise you this. I won't give up. Not until we figure this out or you tell me to stop. Kalara looked at the hologram still floating in the air, showing the simplified model of her body. She thought about her family back home, about the messages they had sent telling her to come back and live quietly in a care facility. She thought about the rest of her life, decades stretching ahead with nothing to do and nowhere to go. Then she looked at Jake, this strange human who had walked into her room with his datapad and his impossible confidence and his refusal to accept that some problems could not be solved. Alright, she said, let's try. The corner of the engineering workshop became Jake's second home. He cleared out old equipment and brought in everything he needed for the project. Medical scanners lined one wall. A three-dimensional printer took up another corner. Cables and tools covered every flat surface. The space looked chaotic, but Jake knew where everything was. Dr. Myra Chen visited on the third day to see what he was doing. She stood in the doorway and stared at all the equipment. You're really serious about this? Completely serious. Jake was adjusting settings on a scanner. I've been in contact with prosthetics researchers on Earth. They're sending me data files. And I talked to a neural interface specialist on Europa. She's interested in the project. Jake, do you understand how complex this is? You're not just building a mechanical leg. You're trying to create something that can interface with an alien nervous system that we barely understand. I know, that's what makes it interesting. Jake turned to face her. Look, I'm not saying it will be easy, but every prosthetic seemed impossible before someone figured it out. Humans were the same way once. People said we could never connect artificial limbs to our brains. Now we do it routinely. Myra crossed her arms. And how many years did that take? How many failed attempts? A lot. But we learned from each failure. That's how progress works. Jake gestured at his workshop. I have advantages those early researchers didn't have. Better computers, better materials, better understanding of neural systems, and I have Kalara working with me. She can tell me immediately if something feels wrong. Myra was quiet for a moment. She seems different lately, more engaged. That's because of you. She just needed a reason to keep fighting. Everyone does. The work started small. Jake spent hours mapping Kalara's neural patterns. He attached sensors to her residual limb and asked her to think about moving her missing leg. The sensors recorded every electrical signal, every nerve impulse. Jake fed all this data into his computer and built a detailed model. The patterns were complex, far more complex than human neural signals. Kalara's brain sent hundreds of tiny commands every second, adjusting balance and weight distribution across all 4 legs. With one leg missing, her brain was confused. It kept trying to use a leg that was no longer there. This is the key, Jake explained, showing Kalara his data screens. Your brain is still sending all the right commands. We just need to capture those commands and translate them into mechanical movement. Physical therapy started the same week. Lisa Grant, the Cohenese physical therapist, worked with Kalara every morning. Lisa was patient but firm. She pushed Kalara to exercise her remaining legs, to maintain muscle strength, to practice balance on 3 legs even though it felt impossible. The sessions were hard. Kalara fell constantly. Her body did not know how to work with 3 legs. 4-legged balance required all 4 limbs. Without the 4th, everything felt wrong. She got frustrated and angry. Some days she wanted to quit, but Jake was always there, making adjustments to his designs based on what he learned from watching her move. And Lisa never let her give up, always encouraging her to try one more time. Weeks turned into months. Jake built his first prototype prosthetic. It was crude, just basic metal and simple hydraulics, but it had the neural interface he had designed. A cap that fit over Kalara's residual limb and connected to her nerves. They tried it in the medical wing with Dr. Chen standing by. Jake carefully attached the prosthetic to Kalara's limb. The neural interface activated, reading her nerve signals. He checked all the connections twice. Okay, he said. Try to think about moving your leg. Don't force it. Just think about taking a step like you used to. Kalara concentrated. The prosthetic twitched. Then it moved, but the motion was jerky and unnatural. She tried to put weight on it. The leg buckled and she almost fell. Jake caught her. The signals are getting through, Jake said, studying his data pad. But the response time is too slow. Your brain sends a command, and the leg responds a fraction of a second late. That's why it feels wrong. They spent another month improving the neural interface. Jake worked with a specialist from Europa, running simulations and testing different connection protocols. He tried using faster processors. He experimented with different sensor placements. Slowly, the response time got better. The second prototype was more advanced. Jake used lightweight carbon fiber for the structure. The joints were more sophisticated, with tiny motors that could make micro-adjustments. The neural interface was faster, more sensitive. This time, when Kalara tried to move, the leg responded almost instantly. It was still not perfect, but it was better. She could make it take a step. The motion was clumsy and she could not put her full weight on it, but it was progress. We're getting closer, Jake said. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. He had been working 16-hour days for weeks. The interface is good now. The problem is the leg itself. It's not responding to the full range of your commands. You're sending signals for balance adjustment, but the leg isn't making those tiny corrections. Kalara had learned a lot about engineering over the past months. She understood the problem. You need more sensors, more points of contact. Exactly. But where, and how do we connect them all without overwhelming the interface? They worked on the problem together. Kalara described exactly what her natural leg used to feel. She explained how her foot sensed texture and temperature, how her knee made constant tiny adjustments, how her hip distributed weight. Jake took notes on everything, designing more complex sensor arrays. The third prototype took 2 more months to build. It was a work of art. Hundreds of microsensors lined the artificial limb. The foot had pressure sensors that could detect the smallest changes in terrain. The knee used adaptive hydraulics that adjusted automatically to Kalara's movements. The neural interface was so sensitive it could pick up signals that Kalara was not even consciously aware of sending. But when they tested it, something went wrong. The leg responded too strongly to a signal. It moved violently, throwing Kylara off balance. She fell hard. The leg shorted out, sparks flying from the neural interface. Kylara cried out in pain. Dr. Chen rushed over, checking her for injuries. Jake carefully removed the prosthetic, his hands shaking. The neural interface had overloaded, sending feedback through Kylara's nerves. It had hurt her. "I'm sorry," Jake said. "I'm so sorry. I thought I had it calibrated correctly." Kylara was breathing hard, trying to master the pain. "It's okay. We knew there would be failures. You could have been seriously injured. If the feedback had been any stronger, it could have damaged your nerves permanently, but it didn't." Kylara looked at him. "You can fix this. I know you can." Jake did not sleep that night. He went over every line of code, every circuit diagram, trying to find what had gone wrong. He found the error at 3 in the morning. A simple mistake in the feedback calibration. The kind of error that seemed obvious once you spotted it. He fixed it. Then he checked everything else twice, looking for similar problems. He ran simulations. He tested the prosthetic on a dummy limb connected to nerve simulation equipment. Only when he was absolutely certain it was safe did he bring it back to Kylara. "If you want to stop," he said, "I understand. I put you at risk. That's not acceptable." Kylara shook her head. "I want to continue, but Jake, you need to sleep more. You're making mistakes because you're exhausted." He smiled tiredly. "I'll sleep when we're done." The fourth prototype worked. Not perfectly, but better than anything before. Kylara could move the leg with reasonable control. She could stand on all 4 legs, though her balance was still shaky. She could take several steps before needing to stop and rest. The entire colony was watching the project now. Other species representatives came to observe the testing. Some were skeptical. Others were cautiously interested. A few admitted that if Jake succeeded, it would change everything they thought they knew about prosthetics. 6 months into the project, Kylara could walk across the physical therapy room using the prosthetic. It was not graceful. It was not natural. But it was walking. She had 4 legs again, even if one of them was artificial. Jake made more improvements. He added feedback systems that let Kylara feel texture through the artificial foot. He refined the balance algorithms. He made the movements smoother, more natural. Every day brought small progress. Every week, Kylara got a little better at using her new leg. They were close. So close. But the final step remained the hardest. Making the leg feel natural. Making it part of Kylara's body instead of just a tool attached to her body. That was the real challenge. That was what would determine if they had truly succeeded or just created an expensive crutch. 9 months after the accident, Jake stood in his workshop and looked at the final version of the prosthetic leg. It gleamed under the lights, beautiful and complex. Every piece had been tested and retested. Every connection had been verified. This was his best work. The culmination of months of sleepless nights and endless refinements. The leg was a masterpiece of engineering. The carbon fiber frame was strong but lighter than bone. Neural interface nodes, each smaller than a grain of rice, covered the socket where it would connect to Kylara's residual limb. The knee joint used advanced hydraulics that could respond in milliseconds. The foot contained hundreds of sensors arranged in patterns that mimicked the pressure points on a natural Dacian foot. But the real innovation was in the software. Jake had written code that learned from Kylara's movements, adapting constantly to her neural patterns. The prosthetic would not just respond to her commands. It would anticipate them, making adjustments before her conscious mind even registered the need. Dr. Chen came to inspect the prosthetic the day before the attachment surgery. She examined it carefully, running her medical scanner over every component. The biocompatible materials check out. The neural interface passes all safety protocols. "I still think this is the craziest thing I've ever been part of, but if it works," she trailed off, shaking her head in wonder. "It will work," Jake said. He had to believe that. He had put everything into this project. The surgery took 6 hours. Dr. Chen worked with precise care, connecting the prosthetic to Kylara's residual limb. Jake assisted, guiding the placement of each neural interface node. They had to get the connections exactly right. Too shallow and the signals would be weak. Too deep and they might cause damage. Kylara was under anesthesia, unaware of the delicate work being done. The medical team moved around her with practiced efficiency, monitoring her vital signs, adjusting equipment, handing instruments to Dr. Chen. Finally, the physical connection was complete, but that was just the first step. The neural integration would take days. Kylara's nerves needed time to accept the interface nodes, to start sending signals through the new pathways. They had to introduce the connection gradually or risk overwhelming her. Nervous system. Jake stayed in the medical wing the entire time. He slept in a chair next to Kalara's bed, his datapad always within reach. He monitored the neural integration constantly, watching as her nerves slowly began communicating with the prosthetic. On the third day, Kalara woke with the prosthetic fully integrated. She opened her eyes and immediately felt different. There was a presence where the emptiness had been, not the same as her natural leg, but something, a connection. How do you feel? Dr. Chen asked Kalara, concentrated, trying to understand the new sensations. I can feel it. The leg. It's strange, foreign, but it's there. Jake leaned forward, studying his readings. Try to move it. Just think about flexing your foot. Kalara focused. The prosthetic foot moved. She gasped. It had responded to her thought, to her intention. For the first time in 9 months she had 4 legs again. But having 4 legs and being able to use them were different things. The first attempts at walking were disasters. Kalara's brain knew how to walk on 4 legs, but the prosthetic did not move exactly like her natural leg. The timing was off by tiny fractions. The weight distribution felt wrong. She stood up, tried to take a step, and immediately fell. Lisa, the physical therapist, was there to catch her. It's okay. We expected this. Your brain needs to relearn how to walk with this new leg. It will take time. They tried again and again. Kalara fell dozens of times that first day. Her remaining legs ached from the effort. The residual limb where the prosthetic attached hurt despite the pain medication. She grew frustrated, angry at her clumsy body, angry at the leg that would not cooperate. Jake made adjustments after each attempt. He tweaked the response times, adjusted the balance algorithms, modified the sensor sensitivity. He was calm and patient, never showing frustration even when Kalara snapped at him in anger. A week passed with little progress. Kalara could stand reliably now, but walking was still nearly impossible. She could manage 1 or 2 steps before losing her balance. It was better than nothing, but far from the graceful movement she remembered. On a quiet morning in the physical therapy room, something changed. Kalara stood on all 4 legs, breathing slowly, trying to center herself. She was tired of falling, tired of the struggle, but she was also tired of giving up. She thought about the past 9 months, about everything Jake had done for her, about all the hours Lisa had spent helping her. She closed her eyes and stopped trying so hard. She did not think about the prosthetic as a separate thing. She just thought about walking, 1 step forward, like she had done 10,000 times before the accident. Her leg moved. The prosthetic leg, but it did not feel like a machine. It felt like her leg. The sensation was not exactly the same as before, but it was close enough. Her brain accepted it, incorporated it into her body image. Kalara took another step, then another. She was walking, actually walking. Her gait was not perfect, but it was recognizably Vesa. Her 4 legs worked together, distributing weight, maintaining balance. She walked across the room, 6 meters, 8 meters, 10 meters. She stopped and opened her eyes. Jake and Lisa were staring at her with expressions of shock and joy. Dr. Chun had her hand over her mouth. I walked, Kalara said. The words came out as barely a whisper. I walked, and the reality of it hit her. She had walked. After 9 months of despair and pain and endless work, she had walked. Tears began streaming down her face. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Jake stood up from where he had been monitoring his equipment. He walked over to her slowly. How does it feel? I can feel the floor, Kalara said, amazed. Through the prosthetic foot, I can feel the texture of it. The temperature, it's incredible. The sensors are working exactly as designed. They're sending tactile information through the neural interface to your brain. Jake's voice was thick with emotion. You're not just controlling the leg. You're experiencing through it. Over the next 2 weeks, Kalara's walking improved dramatically. Her brain adapted to the prosthetic faster now that it had accepted it as part of her body. The initial breakthrough had been the hardest part. After that, everything else came more naturally. She practiced for hours every day, walking in straight lines, turning, navigating obstacles, going up and down ramps. Lisa pushed her to try more difficult tasks, building her confidence and ability. The prosthetic learned from every movement. Jake's adaptive software adjusted the response patterns, making the leg more responsive, more intuitive. By the end of the 2nd week, Kalara's gait was almost normal. An expert might notice a slight difference in her movement, but to casual observers, she looked like any other. The SSE and Jake made one final modification. He added a synthetic covering that matched Kalara's natural fur color. It was not perfect, but it made the prosthetic look less obviously artificial. Kalara appreciated the gesture, though she had stopped caring what the leg looked like. Function mattered more than appearance. On the 30th day after the surgery, Calora walked into the colony cafeteria during the lunch rush. Conversation stopped as people noticed her. She walked to the food line with steady, confident steps. No cane, no assistance. Just walking like it was the most natural thing in the world. The entire cafeteria burst into applause. Humans, Thessians, and half a dozen other species all clapped and cheered. Some people had tears in their eyes. They had all watched the project unfold over the months. They had seen Calora at her lowest point and had hoped, even when hope seemed foolish, that Jake might actually succeed. Calora felt her face grow warm with embarrassment and pride. She looked around the cafeteria until she spotted Jake sitting at a table in the corner. He was smiling, but his eyes were red. He raised his cup in a small, private toast. She got her food and walked over to his table. "Mind if I sit here?" Jake laughed. "I'd be honored." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Calora said, "Thank you. I know I've said it before, but I need to say it again. You gave me back my life. You did most of the work. I just built the tool. You did more than that. You refused to accept that some problems can't be solved. That's not just engineering. That's hope." She looked down at her prosthetic leg, flexed the foot, felt the sensors respond. "This isn't just a leg. It's proof that the future can be better than the past." "That's something I had forgotten." Jake met her eyes. "What will you do now?" "Live," Calora said simply. "Actually live. I don't know all the details yet, but for the first time in 9 months, I have a future to plan for." News of Calora's successful prosthetic spread through the colony like wildfire. Within days, the story reached other settlements across Viridian Prime. Within weeks, it had traveled to nearby star systems. A Vessian who could walk again after losing a leg was big news. It challenged centuries of accepted medical knowledge. Representatives from different species began arriving at the colony. Some came to see Calora walk with their own eyes, not quite believing the reports. Others wanted to examine the prosthetic, to understand how it worked. A few brought hope that maybe, just maybe, this technology could help others. The Thessian government sent an official delegation. 3 elderly officials in traditional robes arrived on a transport ship and requested a meeting with Calora and Jake. Took place in the colony's conference room with Dr. Chen and the colony administrator also present. The lead official, an older female named Sarana, studied Calora as she walked into the room. Her eyes widened slightly, though she tried to maintain a neutral expression. The reports were accurate. "You truly can walk." "Yes," Calora said simply. She stood on all 4 legs with perfect balance, her prosthetic indistinguishable from her natural legs, except for the slight color difference in the synthetic covering. "May I see the prosthetic?" Calora lifted her artificial leg and rotated it, showing how naturally it moved. "It's fully integrated with my nervous system. I can feel through it. I can control it as easily as my natural legs." Sarana was quiet for a long moment. "This changes everything we thought we knew. For generations, we have told ourselves that such injuries were permanent, that those who lost limbs would never walk again. Your medical technology couldn't solve the problem," Jake said. "But human engineering approaches things differently. We see problems as puzzles to solve, not limitations to accept." Another official spoke up, his voice skeptical. "One success does not mean this will work for everyone. This could be a unique case." "It's not unique," Jake countered. "The technology is adaptable. The neural interface can be calibrated for any individual. The prosthetic design can be modified for different body types. This is replicable." The delegation spent 3 days at the colony. They observed Calora walking, running, even climbing stairs. They examined the prosthetic in detail. They interviewed Jake and Dr. Chen about the development process. When they finally left, they promised to present their findings to the Aveshan Medical Council, but they were not the only visitors. A week later, 2 representatives from the Kelvin species arrived. The Kelvins were tall, slender beings who walked on 2 legs. One of them, a young male named Torvin, had lost his arm in an industrial accident 2 years ago. "We heard what you did for Calora," Torvin said to Jake. "Could you do something similar for me?" Jake examined Torvin's injury and took detailed scans. The challenges were different from Calora's case, but not insurmountable. "It will take time, months, probably, and I'll need to study Kelvin physiology. But yes, I think I can help you." More requests came. A human miner who had lost both legs in an explosion, a Drexian trader whose species had never developed prosthetic technology, an elderly Decian who had lived for decades with only 3 legs and had almost given up hope of ever walking normally again. Jake could not help them all alone. He contacted prosthetics researchers across human space, sharing his designs and methods. He organized video conferences with medical professionals from a dozen different species. Together, they began developing standardized approaches for prosthetic integration across different biologies. The work consumed Jake completely. He barely slept, spending every waking hour either building prosthetics or teaching others how to build them. Several major corporations offered him huge salaries to come work for them. He refused them all. The technology he had developed was too important to lock behind corporate patents and profit margins. Clara returned to work 6 months after her successful recovery. She did not go back to the dangerous deep mines though. Instead, she took a position training new surveyors. She taught them about safety protocols, about recognizing unstable rock formations, about all the things she had learned the hard way. She walked through the colony every day, and every day people stopped to watch her. Some stared in wonder, others smiled and waved. Children of various species would run up to her, asking to see her special leg. She always stopped and showed them, explaining in simple terms how it worked. The prosthetic required maintenance, of course. Once a month, Kayla visited Jake's workshop so he could check the connections, update the software, and replace any worn components. These visits became something they both looked forward to. They would talk about the latest developments in prosthetic technology, about the new patients Jake was helping, about Kalara's work and life. One day, Kalara received a message from her family on the Decian homeworld. It was different from the earlier messages that had urged her to come home and accept her fate. This message was filled with pride. Her younger brother wrote about how her story had inspired him to study engineering. Her mother apologized for giving up hope too quickly. But the most important message came from the Vesian Medical Council. They wanted Kalara to return home, not to live in a care facility but to help establish a prosthetics program. They were building a new medical center dedicated to developing and fitting prosthetics for injured vision. They wanted her to be part of it. Kalara sat in her quarters, reading the message 3 times. It was everything she had once thought impossible. A purpose, a future, recognition that her life still had value and meaning. She walked to Jake's workshop that evening. He was working on a prosthetic arm for Torvin, making fine adjustments to the finger joints. He looked up when she entered, immediately sensing something was different. "I got a message from my homeworld," she said. Jake put down his tools. "Good news or bad?" "Good news. Amazing news, actually. They want me to come home, to help build a prosthetics program there." She paused. "I wanted you to hear it from me first." Jake smiled, though there was sadness in his eyes. "That's wonderful, Kalara. It's what you deserve. I haven't decided yet. There's still a lot of work to do here. You have patients waiting, and I've built a life on this colony. You should go," Jake said firmly. "Think about how many Vesians need help. Thousands, probably. Maybe tens of thousands living with injuries that don't have to be permanent. You can make a real difference there. You could come with me. They would pay you well, give you a fully equipped lab." Jake shook his head. "My place is here. There are people from a dozen different species who need help, and I need to keep developing the technology, making it better, more accessible. But you should absolutely go." They talked late into the night, making plans. Kalara would return to the Vesian homeworld in 3 months. That would give her time to finish training her replacement at work and to help Jake with his current patients. It would also give Jake time to train their Shon engineers in his methods so they could maintain and improve Kalara's prosthetic once she was home. The colony held a celebration the week before. Kyla was scheduled to leave. The cafeteria was decorated with lights and banners. Food from a dozen different cultures filled tables along the walls. Music played, and people danced despite their wildly different body types and movement styles. Kylara moved through the crowd, saying goodbye to people she had worked with, people who had supported her through the darkest time of her life. Lisa gave her a long hug. Dr. Chan made her promise to send regular updates. Dozens of others wished her well. She found Jake sitting outside the cafeteria, away from the noise and crowd. He was looking up at the stars, lost in thought. Kalara approached quietly and sat down beside him. "Not a fan of parties?" she asked. "I prefer quieter celebrations." Jake glanced at her. "Are you excited about going home?" "Excited and terrified. What if I can't help them the way you helped me?" "You'll be fine. You know what it's like to lose hope and find it again. That understanding will help you connect with patients in ways that doctors never can." Jake was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to miss working with you. I'll miss you too. You changed my life, Jake. I don't know if I ever properly thanked you for that. You thanked me by not giving up, by working hard even when it hurt, by believing that maybe, just maybe, things could get better." Jake looked down at his hands. "You gave me something to, purpose, the knowledge that my work can make a real difference." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. The prosthetic leg that had brought them together hummed quietly, its sensors constantly adjusting, its neural interface transmitting signals, its mechanical joints moving slightly as Kalara shifted her weight. It was not just a piece of technology anymore. It was part of her, as natural as breathing. 3 months later, Kalara stood in her quarters one last time, checking that she had packed everything. Her shuttle would depart in an hour. She picked up a photo of herself and Jake taken on the day she had first walked successfully. They were both smiling, exhausted, but happy. She carefully placed it in her bag. The shuttle ride to the transport ship was quick. The transport would take her on the 3-week journey back to the Vessian homeworld, back to family and responsibilities and the hard work of building something new.